Hello and welcome to another episode of the HappYness Helix Podcast. We have a guest here today, and like our first guest, a few people that I definitely wanted to have on the podcast as a guest. Why? Each of these guests have inspired me by who they are and how they are, not necessarily what they are, but who they are and how they are. So today's guest is a dear friend, and we go back 43 years, and we were in school together, right? The other connection that we have is my father's name is Gowri Shankar, and my guest today is Gowri Shankar. Gowri and I have been great friends, and we were part of the gang in school that people remember. Not always for the right reasons, but for reasons that brings a smile to their faces, right? We were outstanding students, mostly standing outside of class, never in class, right? So, and both of us, I think we took different routes. And here we are, doing very similar things. So one thing that was common to Gowri and Cheenu, or GS as I was known in school, and Gowri still calls me Gowri GS, is that whenever our classmates, friends, their mothers invited us home for a meal, if Gowri and GS turned up, they were very happy. Why? Because we would do justice to whatever was made. And the other thing is that both Gowri and I, before we sat down, and in Chennai, in the 80s, you sit down on the floor, most places to eat. And so Gowri and I will both sit down, and before we sit down, we will unbuckle our belt if we were wearing one. We'd open the button on our pant because we knew that it would become a tough fight for the trouser to keep pace with what we were going to consume. So the other joke that we have, I don't know whether I should call it a joke, but that's all of us in classmates in school, we've been trying to find out what Gowri does. Right? He's one of the most prolific investors, serial entrepreneurs, and more important than anything else to me, he is one of the most wonderful human beings that I've known. So Gowri, happy to have you here, and as much as you tried to wriggle away from this, I didn't let you. So, you're on.
First of all, thank you for having me as one of your early guests. As I told you, I think you should have a celebrity and not me.
To me, you're the celebrity.
I thought that will get me out of it, but no. But I'm excited to be on it, and I'm glad I'm here. And I'm glad you traveled to Chennai to record this with your team. It's unbelievable. So I can't say enough about the 43 years we have known each other. And I cannot even believe it is 43 till you just said it. I still see it like it was yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's just the idea that I don't need any ramp to start a conversation with you. It's always there. It's a unbelievable thing that every human being should be blessed with friends like you. So I'm a lucky one. So thank you very much.
As am I. As am I. So Gowri, this is part of the title of the podcast is the HappYness Helix, and this is something that I picked up over my years of working with individuals, teams, and all of that. And I realized that it's very simple. Wherever one is, whatever age, wherever they are in life, this moment is it. And in this moment, we have a choice. Making one choice helps us take control of our lives. However, it also means that I have to get on the arduous, effortful initially, path of taking responsibility for myself and where I am. The easier option, but it's not a useful option, is to abdicate responsibility and say, why the fill in the blanks is my life like this? Why am I here? So the HappYness Helix is wherever it is that a person is, it starts there. And I say going up, it's a combination of a very steep, downward sloped steps or a rope ladder. And it's a spiral. And there are about 6 landings on the way up. The 7th one is the same one that we start from here. So it repeats itself. The first landing is where we are. Responsibility. This is it. I'm responsible. If I do that, then chances are it'll get me to the second landing through a series of steps. There are methods, processes. And that is, I have a reasonably good attitude. And if I have a reasonably good attitude, it takes me to the third landing, which is I'm supported, I'm liked, people want me. And if there is a paucity of resources, chances are that that person might give it to me than to another person that they might not like as much. Which brings me through another series of steps, which is what I'm going to focus a little with you on. The 4th landing, which is I set and achieve my objectives by design consistently, predictably. Which then, naturally, if I do that enough number of times, will lead me to the 5th landing, which is I am reasonably more confident in myself, my ability. I think that I can do more than I've already done. Which takes me to my 6th landing, which is I'm going to take on larger objectives that is not just going to be focused on me, but on, let's say, society or community or whatever it is, the world. And if I have that kind of thing when I wake up in the morning, right? Something that you said yesterday at dinner stuck with me. Wake up every morning, I'm going to make this a success today. I'm not going to fail today. So if I have a larger than myself objective, chances are that, when you wake up in the morning, when I wake up in the morning, we'll say, you know what, I'm going to make this work, right? So it goes on and on and on. On the reverse, abdicate responsibility, blame, victim, all of that, which means that I'm not going to have a solid attitude, which means that people are not going to like me, which means that I'm not going to get support and I'm not going to be achieving my goals by design, which means that my confidence will come down further, and which means that I will take on smaller and smaller objectives, and it's a downward slide. So this is the HappYness Helix. I'm hoping to build a community where it supports people who are part of the community, where they can share their success stories, where they can share their challenges, the questions that they have, and hopefully this podcast will be a way of getting people like you who've you've been there, you've seen this, you've seen so many entrepreneurs on this kind of a journey. So that's the structure. Obviously, I have a few questions written down, but I didn't share that with you, right? So I'm just going to be starting off with, what are your thoughts on this structure and how have you seen it in life? Does this sort of resonate with what you might have seen, both in the upward direction and in the downward direction? And what observations do you have?
Before I answer, right? First, congratulations on starting the podcast and releasing episodes. That I know it is a hard run, and it's great that you're doing it. Second, one thing that was revealing during the whole COVID crisis, the globe faced, humanity faced, is that mental health is important.
Yeah.
And till then, we couldn't really define how we are feeling, or we weren't taught. Suddenly the world changed and mental health came into the forefront.
Yeah.
And I think your work and the podcast, even if it helps a few or many, I hope, is a good thing for the world, and I congratulate you and your team for putting this together.
Absolutely.
First, right? See, the interesting, right, you asked the question, have I seen this, right? So, whenever you encounter humans, right, they immediately want to box themselves into a label that they think they are, and first come out and say, this is who I am, this is not who I am, this is, and that signaling happens along the way in many ways with you, right?
Yeah.
And usually if the narrative that they are pushing doesn't fit in some fashion, it goes into the downward spiral almost immediately. They think, oh, no, I was never meant to be, or I am this, I am not that, the narrative somehow suddenly then doesn't fit the label that actually was imposed on them by somebody else, not even them. Because like either the color of my skin, my height, my weight was not like, it's just, I can't just change the color of my skin, or I can't change how tall I am in any meaningful fashion. So it was always done by the others, right? But the narrative then fits because you accepted it and said, hey, this is how I should be, this is what I don't want to be. And when you do that, and when the world being the world, and it was always polarized, it's just stark now. I didn't think people suddenly woke up one morning saying, I'm going to be polarized after this. It's always polarized, but it's now stark because of the mediums we use. Now that you fall into one of the other camps, then you are going between positive and negative constantly. But the negative is more often because you have a lot more voices talking to you that are not yours. And when I talk to entrepreneurs in general, right, and that's sort of my vantage point, especially having been one and seeing many entrepreneurs go through this, they all have had a mental map of where this thing will happen. And the map is much how you describe, right? They go through the stages. But I always tell them the stages are not just jumps and leaps. It could happen, and it does happen. But usually they are micro steps leading to the next stage. And when you reach the next stage, it's not so obvious you've reached it, but till you look back and then you're like, oh, it looks like I'm at this stage, I can build on something more, and your strides get better. So this marathon that they're on of the life, they fail to see that one step in front of the other, and they always want to see why the next step isn't resulting in something that they thought would be the result at the end of the marathon. No, you still got to put the next step on. And that's what I find it interesting, that the most of the spiral down is because you just haven't chosen to do the next step, which is what you woke up to do that morning. And whatever the hurdles are, were going to happen irrespective. They're not like they didn't chase you down and said, I'm going to put the hurdle on you. They're just going to say, hey, it's happening. How do I navigate this? I didn't anticipate this. This didn't happen. That didn't happen. You have to automatically assume everything will happen, but you still got to go forward. And that, I think, is the part that people forget. And therefore, this downward spiral sets in. And when the downward spiral sets in, it's hard for them to come out, because I think there is this misnomer that if you are transparent about your downward spiral, that you are disclosing to others that you are not so good, great, and your vulnerabilities are exposed. And, humans are being taught all the time, don't be vulnerable, be this, man, woman, anything. This is bravado thing. But I truly believe that, I got here because so many others decided that they will be part of this journey.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that I exposed my vulnerabilities a lot to them, and I can distinctly recall when I didn't, and the spiral downward happened. And when I saw it and didn't worry about it, it actually helped. And the collective wisdom of the world will actually help you get to the steps much easier than usually when you're in a spiral down, you're by yourself. But when you're spiral up, you're with everybody. But the world tells you when you're in a spiral up, it's you. When you spiral down, it's the world. It's actually the reverse. And we, at least technology-wise, we suffer from this, single human, big personality, solved world hunger. Every one of these things had lots of great people associated with them, and I'm sure that they had the right vision to get there. And entrepreneurs are no different in my mind, because what they surround themselves with is what gets them to the next step. And the minute they close those people around them, they go down.
Yeah.
And they can't get out without them.
Absolutely.
So, long-winded answer like I always give you, but
Very insightful, right? And this is one of the things that I've loved about you, which is that it's that raw intelligence which is tempered by the experiences that you've had. And it's not some book knowledge. It is real life knowledge. And you've seen this. And like I have, you also, I think at some points of time, you've experienced it, you've come through it, and then you retrofit a method or a process or a structure on what happened. And I think that's what most human beings do. So thank you for that. Because one thing that you mentioned, right, that you found yourself on the slide, right? When did you notice when did you understand that you were on the slide? 1. 2, what did you do yourself? And you said something very interesting. Asking for help is only possible by strong people. Did you?
yeah. So there were many times I've found myself that I was sort of on the downward slide. And some of early stages of my life was surprise. I actually didn't know I was sliding down. I just woke up and I was like, it's going wrong, it's not working, etc. And at that time, the first time I actually felt I was not going anywhere was I was in a job, and I was thinking the job had a location move, and I was only doing it because it was a job, and I wasn't into it, and it was playing in my mind so much, and I had just ran into this friend of mine. She went to MBA school with me. And by just happenstance, I was just talking to her what she was doing, etc. And she was doing something interesting, and she said, "Well, why don't you come and do this?" I mean, and I said, "Yeah, why not?" Right? And the trigger for me was, "What are you doing? You're doing. You should do something else." And although it seemed like a very nonchalant thing, the trigger in your mind was usually when it listens and says, "Hey, this is the trigger." And that journey was, for a long, it went on, and that actually set me on a completely different path. And I, later on, in one of my startups, I partnered with 2-3 other people, and we had fundamental philosophical differences.
Wow.
And we had raised a lot of money by then. So now, do you stick with it? Because it was not that philosophical as in, we will go this company take this way, or we'll take the company this way. That can be resolved usually, because they are just, what I would like to think, you go through a door and sometimes you can't come back, and you live with that decision. But when it's value based, where your values don't align with it, the trigger for me was that wasn't that that this would affect the entire startup. The trigger for me was, do I stand for my value despite the opportunity to be economically very fulfilling or maybe wealthy? And this was a sort of a struggle, right? Because we had raised a lot of money, we could go somewhere, and it looked like we could go somewhere. So going back to that time again, right? A person who served on the board of the startup was talking to me and said, "Are you happy?" And I was stunned by that question, because, hey, you invested a ton of money on me, and these guys, are you saying you're happy? And I said, "Why do you ask?" He says, I don't know, I just feel you're not. And so I want to know, if you're not happy, that's okay to learn. I said, I'm struggling with something. Then we shared what the value differences were. I said, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? You walk away and start again. You've already done it, so don't worry about doing it. But you will never be able to live with yourself compromising a value because it'll haunt you for a long time. Turns out that was extremely wise advice. These conversations are less than 1 or 2 minutes, right? And now when I ask me the question, did I know? A lot of the time I knew, and I would struggle for months, weeks, and live with it. But a 2-minute conversation can be the trigger, says, okay, here is the clarity that comes in, right? And it happens. I mean, it happened 10 years ago when I said, okay, should I not be running a company and should do something else? And I felt like that's not me. I should be running a company. Again, living somebody else's.
Yeah.
You've been running companies for 20. You got to be running a company. Nobody asked me to run a company. Nobody expected me to run one.
Yeah.
And my wife said, Anandita said, hey, what's the big deal if you don't run it? The world won't stop. It'll turn.
Yeah.
And you will find something else to do.
Yeah.
And that set on a different journey. Found, like-minded people to do investing with. So there are small slides, big slides. But if you listen to the world around you and know how to tune it, the small slides won't become big slides. Small slides even happen every day. You get frustrated, you slide and you think, oh, this is happening to me. But you have the tools to kind of say, hey, no, I understand, and then you come out of it, right? And that, I think, is, I tell entrepreneurs, look, your startup, whatever that is you're going to do, is going to hit this trough of adversity, and no matter how good it is. And you take every startup in the world has hit that trough of adversity.
Yeah.
And by then, if you have figured out how to wake up the next morning and come out, you actually are increasing your chance of success logarithmically than if you just say, I have the best product, I have this, everybody has got, you can't have the best idea.
Yeah.
Because if you have the best idea, automatically 1,000 other humans already have your idea.
Absolutely.
You can't be the only guy.
Absolutely.
So these things that happen, how do I go, your key question, how do I go about it? Over time, I've figured out how to listen to those inputs. It was hard beginning because I thought I need not share with them. I don't need to listen to them. What is it that they know? And but when you allow that input to come in over time, the unconscious stream just wakes up, and that allows you to say, hey, this is fine. We'll find so when slides happen, you got to go find a footing, because you can't just stop in a slide. So when footing happens, then you know how to keep moving around and say, hey, okay, I this is good. I can get that, and that, I think, unfortunately, is never is not taught. Both the mindful presence and mindful listening is not taught. And it's unfortunate that meditation isn't pushed further. Because everybody thinks, oh, it's just calm my mind, actually.
Correct.
And I completely believe that my mind is most awake when I try to meditate.
Absolutely.
Every day, right?
Absolutely.
It's most awake.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to make sure that during that time is not that my mind is awake or mind is asleep, but that my mind has the capability to take inputs. And is it still drawing this unconscious stream?
Yeah.
And I think the amount of sort of differences I make, or increments, are so minute. When you do that, you get there.
So, to To listeners and to the viewers of this podcast, we apologize for the background noise. We are in Singara, Chennai, as it's called. And there are some drums that are being beaten, maybe because Gowri and I got together. And furthermore, there are some fireworks that are going off, definitely because the two of us got together. And without speaking, we were almost color coordinated. Right. So I think apologies for the background noise. Hopefully, and this is another thing that I missed out in our introduction. Gowri is known for his booming voice, right? And therefore, hopefully, it was Gowri who was speaking then, and he might have drowned out the drums and the firecrackers. Right? So
it's always good to have real world noise.
And, this is not, we're not doing it in a studio, and the intent is to share what we have been through in life.
Yeah.
And even if one life gets a benefit from what you and I are sharing today, I think our purpose is served. It's not about the number of people, but the quality of difference that we're able to make to one individual. Something very interesting that you said in all of this, right? Which is the person asking you, are you happy? And then the follow-up. And when you shared what you did and what the person said, you can always start up. Right? That incongruence, non-alignment to the value will stay with you forever.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to want to delve a little deeper into this, because in today's world, the way entrepreneurship is, you know it better than I do, is that FOMO takes over.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Is this my only chance?
Yeah.
And that leads to people being so scared, so afraid. If I miss this, will I get another chance?
Yeah.
Right? And I see this in the other side of the work that I do, which is in relationships.
Yep.
There are people who are persisting in a relationship when there is a blatant and flagrant incongruence, misalignment in terms of core values, right? And the reason they persist in it is because, will I get another chance? Will I find somebody else to be with me? In business, it is, will I find another opportunity for me to work on? Will I be able to make a success of it, right? So I want you to delve a little deeper into that and describe to viewers and listeners, how did you make that choice that, my values are more important? I know it's the easy choice for most of us. It's not so easy for...
No, it's not. I wouldn't classify it as an easy choice for many entrepreneurs because, look, you have a opportunity to make life-altering wealth, or make a platform or something that you produce change the world in a way that you didn't intend or even imagine. So those are all running through your head at the same time. And whatever the reasons of why you got into the startup, which are all probably noble and etc. But there was something in it as to why you woke up and said, I'll solve this problem. And irrespective of the problem, you had a core tenet as to why you're driving through that, right? And that sort of tries to override saying, no, you can live with this, you can live with, it's okay, they don't do this, this is the way startups are done. This narrative is fading. It's the way you got to fake it till you make it. You just make sure that you're alive, and then you have therefore you can get by with all that, right? So it's not an easy thing, right? But I think at some point you got to say, hey, is this what I absolutely want? And that question you need to answer, I think, not because, more importantly, because can you live or not live with it in, much later in life, because that decision will haunt how the startup runs.
Yeah.
And if you're a founder, that has a meaningful impact on the company. And in this case, it was easier because there were two that were on one side, two on the other side. And so it was starkly clear. So maybe the decision was a little easier and it was obvious to the others to ask me that question. But I think your core reasons why you do a startup is not just, hey, I found this opportunity, is a different way of a new widget that can solve this. I'm sure that is there, but it's also the perseverance of saying, I am going to do this. And that value, those set of values, and different for each human, the set of values stay. And any compromises in that will reflect in what the company is doing or not doing. And that will eventually reflect in success, whatever the definition of those are, whatever the metrics are saying, or do this, do that, it'll all be reflected. Because that, at the end of the day, it's humans who run companies. I mean, companies don't run by themselves.
Absolutely.
So, and that I think is it's not easy. It's not easy. And there is no way to handle it easily either, because you're constantly being told, set that aside. Set that value aside. We'll come back to it when this becomes a success. This is not a add-on.
Yeah.
Right? Values are salt.
Absolutely.
So it's either in or it's not in.
Absolutely.
So that you can't just say, hey, set that aside. We'll figure out if we need it later. There's no flavor at that point, because the dish has gone out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's not easy. I wouldn't even characterize that it was obvious. It wasn't obvious to me. It wasn't easy to me. I think I just had some gut that told me at some point, this voice that told me that I don't think this is the right path. So, and that came back to the trigger was that person asking me, are you happy? Because that voice was bothering. When they asked, it just felt relieved that somebody asked, and I said no. And I was like, oh my God, thank God somebody asked that question. So I am happy to say it. So I don't think it's easy. See, look, the idea that you are taught entrepreneurship and all that, it's all true. Those are all, that's like, you have some talent, therefore you can then get better at the skill. But there's got to be some basics where you got to have some listening. And I'm telling you, that comes into play when you actually have to go talk to a customer. Because you got to let the customer actually tell them how they're going to solve their own problem using your product in a way that they're more excited than you are even them solving it. That's when you see that, oh, that is how this is going to work. There's nobody who can just come and say, hey, you have to buy this.
Yeah.
I mean, buying doesn't, when people say, oh, no, I can sell anything. No, people buy things. You are enabling the buy. So that skill, right, to figure out how to listen to those things is important every day. Whether it's your value or whether it's your day-to-day things, I think it sort of comes back. To me, at least, I was open to listening when that person asked. It was just a trigger. It wasn't that I didn't know, but I needed to know. And you could say, well, you needed to get validated. Well, if that is the case, that's true. But I needed to know.
Is it a figment of my imagination, or is it something? And if it's so obvious to somebody, I need to probably pay heed to it.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. One fascinating thing that you said, and I want to dial a little deeper on this one, which is, you know what? I have a product or a service. I need to make the user of these services, right, more excited about how they're going to be solving their own problems or making their lives better using the service or product that I have to offer, right? And you, correct me if I'm wrong, you seem to say that, it needs to be a pull from them, not a push from us, right? I think this is something that most entrepreneurs would be very, very keen to know. Some basics of, or the essence of how does one, and this is because in my experience, I find that a lot of entrepreneurs are extremely passionate.
Yeah.
They're very committed.
Yeah.
But where they actually stumble is in making this communication
Yeah.
of how my service or product is actually useful for the user.
Yeah.
How do you think you'd do that? And I know that you're great at it. So
Well, I think the first thing, right? Actually, those who are going to use it, a lot of the time have a very acute problem that they are facing, whatever that may be. And you could say, well, they didn't even know they had a problem. No, they knew they had a problem. They were looking for, just to dismiss that they didn't know they had a problem is the first mistake. They actually know they have a problem, right? When you said, hey, just take a very basic, right? Humans walked miles to get water till pipes came along and they didn't have to walk. You think those humans didn't know it was hard to walk several miles to get water? Whose idea it is to say that humans should walk several miles? They knew. I'm sure they got up and said, oh my God, I got to go get water.
Yes.
They accepted it.
Yeah.
They didn't. They might have even complained, but we don't have any way of knowing what they complained. But they survival got over it. Then came say a pipe or a pump and motors and water came, and so that time was saved, right? Same, right? And nobody said, hey, I'll travel 1 hour in traffic to visit office. So Zoom came along, oh, this is a godsend. No, there was needs have always been there. You identified a need and you might have even zoned in on a particular problem and said this will solve this, that, etc. Right? But the user already know they have a problem and they signal all the time they have it. Whether you actually have made your product or service to fit that is the hardest thing for every entrepreneur to find. They try to force what they have made into the problem that may or may not be the one that they're solving for them. So that comes from then saying, yeah, I made this. This is a better way to use it. You're constantly convincing them it's a better way to use it. You got to find the way that best works for them. This actually comes more from listening to a user.
Beautiful.
Right? But most listening. And, when I was a young sales guy and one of my bosses said, hey, our job is to be quiet 90% of the time. And 10% of the time you introduce yourself and you summarize what was just said. If you do those two things, you got the sale. And mostly because they have already told you everything that they want. And if you can listen to it, you will find that there's ways to solve it. The urgency to carry the victory flag, right? Saying, hey, I've made a sale, doesn't allow you to listen, right? So that, because we are, sales is goal driven, so you got to score goals. So I want to score goals so I can turn around and say, hey, I've scored it, right? But part of that is also moving the ball from one end to the other to score it. And that movement, a lot of the time is lots of misses because you haven't figured out what is being told to you. The listening part of it isn't quite there. And more importantly, everybody just kind of thinks that, hey, I'll go, I have charm and I have some magic and I have a great product, I'll sell it to you. 99% of the time I find it, none of that matters. You need to be charming, so that you're not abrasive. But most of the time, what works well is actually listening. At least when I used to, I would insist people write. And there's something to do with tactile information capture. That you will remember things in a way that is unique in that dialogue. That makes it even more interesting, right? So your fundamental question, entrepreneurs are taught you make a great product, it'll sell itself.
Yeah.
I think you make a great product that there is a need for doing it. And you have to keep trying till you figure out how that part of it works. And look, it's like everything else. There's no magic. Everyone, people all get confused saying, they started here, next 18 months later they were here, they exited, they're done and gone. I think that narrative is being pushed so that everybody thinks it's the shortest path. These things are long cycles and you got to put through your effort. But I would say, going back to your relationship example as well as into this, listening is probably more important in any of these than just you pushing. Nobody's pushing anything. Yeah. And I've always found if I push something, people can figure it out. Oh, okay, you're pushing it.
Absolutely.
And you just kind of listen and you try to figure out, right? So, and you have to assume that you're going to hear a no, automatic.
Yeah.
If you think that you're going to hear a yes as soon as you talk, I'm sorry to say this is not the way to operate.
Yeah.
You got to hear no. So going back to your relationship example, to find your right partner, I think you got to listen. And I think especially, right, I'm more and more convinced, right, this is sort of going off. Look, now the methods of finding mates at the moment is through apps and this and that. I mean, some very different methods than the ones that were before these came along, right? There were many methods, but this is the most latest method, right? So, you don't have to be vulnerable. You can be completely transactional, or at least seems to me that way. But I would argue that at least for young men, right, the most important decision they're going to find or they're going to make in their life is a partner.
Yeah.
The most important.
Yeah.
It has implications that will last their entire life. This is one of those go in the door, undoing is such a long cycle and painful thing.
Painful.
For young men is the most important. Finding the right partner that essentially will change the course of their life. And I have no clue of whether these apps are good. I don't have any judgment on these current methods, but where I think that time is not being spent is making the decision itself, right?
Yeah.
And going back to my, sort of the listening. If you say that this is a way for me to meet rather than this is a way for me to just sort of, end, then the listening will become extremely important in finding a partner. I think it's a single most important decision young men can make. Women, I think, have it slightly differently, but young men have today, because they are living on screens, and I think the interactions are lower. It changes. It will change the trajectory. It will completely change the trajectory of one's life. Sure, people get divorced, people get separated. These things happen. Look, the undoing has lasting effects, right? But the doing, if done well, has great success.
Absolutely. So, I'm going to come to one of the statements you made here, but I just want to recap, and it sort of links in with a few of the steps that we have on the HappYness Helix. So, for example, I have a great attitude, leading to and supported. That's the third landing. I think a few of the steps that I've realized and I actually share with my clients is, one is listen to understand. Don't listen to respond. Listen to understand. So just be there. And how do I listen to understand? Active listening. I'm there. Very useful if I can listen from a know-nothing state. which is I do not have any preconceived notions. I'm not making assumptions about why you're saying what you're saying. So listening to understand is one. Another step that I use is what I call suggestive appreciative inquiry, which is basically if you have, for people who are listening and not watching, it's very simple. On the y-axis, on the top, you have positive, and the y-axis you have, on the bottom you have negative. X-axis you have ask and tell. So you have 4 quadrants. Positive ask, positive tell, negative ask, negative tell. Because neurologically we are wired to avoid pain. 5 out of 6 neural circuits is for avoidance of pain. So most people, they default to the negative. So which is negative ask, which is a sarcastic statement or a detrimental statement, right? And that comes from a place of anger and fear. So can we switch it to a positive ask or a positive tell? Right? That's one of the other steps that I talk about. The third thing that you mentioned was that, write. Whenever you're meeting with people, write. The tactile thing. Incidentally, I always used to be telling people that write. And, there have been studies that have been done that, if you type and you write, what you write, you remember more. And I was puzzled. And then I came across a wonderful podcast by Huberman, where he was speaking with somebody who's a neurospecialist with audio and all of that. And they found out that more parts of the brain are activated when you actually put that pen to paper or write. There are 2 or 3 parts of the brain that are used when you're speaking, listening, and all of those things. But a larger number of parts of the brain get activated when you write. So to come back to that in terms of how do I get people to make it their solution. So if we can embed a command not command is too strong a word, but embed a suggestion in and put the answer in to the question itself. A little like what happens in the movie Inception. They will wake up and say, this is my idea. This is what I thought of, right? And that's, I think, one of the things that you mentioned. What I want to come back to is on the relationship. I was a little taken when you said, young men, and 3 times. And I said, when is Gowri going to be politically correct? Right? And he's going to be gender sensitive. And then you said, young women have it different. Right? I'd like you to dial a little deeper on the differences that you see, because you know what? This is not scripting. And this is a wonderful piece of, I'd like to know your thoughts on why and how it's different for young men and how it's different for young women.
Look, I think it's not being politically correct or gender sensitive. See, I think the wiring happens in a way that when, and whether it's historical, I'm sure there's enough data, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people say that's not the case. In my opinion, the path that men take and therefore how they get to through their life, right? The implications on happiness, wealth, which are all the usual metrics that they are being measured on, the validation, the reinforcement, etc., happens in a fashion that is at a better velocity when there's their right partner with them. The women, on the other hand, right? And if you sort of look at the way they are wired, they know how to go about, at least in my mind, they know how to go about it in a fashion that best is for the world. The men are constantly thinking about themselves, and the women are thinking about the world constantly. And therefore, when you find the right partner, the men have a shot at a path that will give them happiness, because it's not just self. Because the world doesn't operate on self. You got to just fundamentally believe the world operates in a bigger circle. And if that is the case, you ought to have a partner that will allow it to be unlocked. The reason I kept saying young men is I think it is a deficit I'm not being insensitive to gender, but the deficit is higher in young men versus young women. When young women take their time, and I think by the way the society is organized, the society is signaling to them, their approach to choosing mates is completely wired in at an earlier stage. While I think for young men, it is ordained that they will find their partner along the way. And, or at least they're being said, focus on this, do that, get to this. They're being fed the steps to whatever the next step is, right? They hardly have any sense of what a relationship, meaningful relationship is going to be. And I think meaningful relationship matter the most
Absolutely.
in one's life.
Absolutely.
Right? And, I'm sure that people fail at these things. None of that is changing. But the fact that you've been invested enough is makes it harder. But going back to your gender sensitivity, the wiring of young women in going about finding their mate is completely different. And they invest the time and investigate in their approach to finding a partner. While I think young men are just, at least in today, it's extremely just kind of going along, and it's either completely closed or completely open or transactional, while you're making the most important decision, more than any job, any exam, any certification you can get. The difference between, I would argue the difference in happiness, wealth creation, any of that is, it's algebraic, right? So the factor that changes the equation is, in my mind, for young men is finding. For young women is actually in being able to do it in a time, because they have other challenges, biological, if they want to start a family, they have other challenges, which science may solve over time. But having said all that, their approach is slightly different. While for young men, their approach is, hey, I just got to focus on this, I got to get a job, or I got to start a company, I got to make money. All of that is true, but only if you have the right support to get there. So going back to your HappYness Helix, in these steps, I fundamentally believe that you got to have the right support that goes along.
Absolutely.
And I think in modern day, that seems to be your partner. And I think the young women, their approach is as to attaining, because they invest much more in finding the right partner, they know how to move along the path, and they just wired. I mean, the society or the wiring, whether it's biological, neurological, I have no idea about all these things, but their wiring is, I find it dramatically different.
Science supports that. Science supports that women, the part of the brain that makes those decisions, those choices, the tough choices, is about 3 to 4, sometimes 5 years ahead of men. So around the 19 to 21 age is when women are able to clearly distinguish those choices. What's good, what's not good, long-term consequences of actions now. And there are various studies, but all studies seem to agree that it's significantly slower for the male of the human species.
Yeah.
And that happens around the 25th year, sometimes to the 27th year.
Yeah.
Anything between 23 and 27.
Yeah.
So you're spot on.
Yeah.
In terms
and the current methods, right? Whether it be apps or whatever they choose to finding their partners, right? The current in vogue is dramatically different than before. There is either courtship, introductions, the world, family, others feeling that this is a way for them to meet, etc. As that dissipates, I'm not saying it is not happening, and the other goes in, then it's you and and a screen and a swipe. So that, in my mind, is not I don't know if it's healthy or not healthy, but I think it's different. And as we move towards this more about, hey, I can make it, I just don't need anybody else, etc. I think it becomes even more difficult if they don't understand. In this algebraic equation, the relationship quotient is going to be extremely important.
Yeah.
And majority of the time is with partners, and then there's parents, siblings, children, but there's that which is the highest, and you pick the wrong one.
Yeah.
It can be undone, but it takes time.
I don't think anybody seriously and sincerely gets into a relationship thinking that it'll get undone.
Yeah.
Right. And then most people who get into a relationship, they're looking at it for keeps.
Yeah.
Right. And what I tell people is that's the one most important relationship, because that's the one you choose.
Yeah.
It is the one that you choose.
Yeah. Others you're not choosing.
Right.
It's
Parents
chosen for you.
chose.
Yeah. And children are
not chosen. This is the one relationship, and I therefore say this is the one most important relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason I harped on young men is because I think the current environment doesn't allow for that investment to happen. It's almost like frowned upon, saying, just kind of move along, right?
Yeah.
And I think we ought to sort of train them and say, no, hey, it's extremely important.
Yes.
It doesn't mean it will be easy. It just means that it's important, right?
By the way, we're talking about apps and all of that, both of us. When Shruti, my daughter, we were looking at various options, and I asked her, do you have somebody in mind? And she says, no. So then I asked her, what do you want to be doing about it? She said, my friends, they suggested some of these apps. So I said, what do you want to do about it? She said, no, that's not for me. I don't feel all right, because I don't think I can make out anything from looking at a screen and at a resume. However, I think, people are, there is this certain, today the food delivery apps are doing a great job, and people are cooking less and less at home, right? I think it might be one of those technology opportunities where, you deliver a mate home, so to say, and this is chosen for you kind of thing. I think, but that's on the slightly flippant and light side, but
yeah.
I'm just going to take a little shift, right? Let's assume that, there are some entrepreneurs out there, young startup entrepreneurs out there, and they don't know whether they're on the up or the down. Because most people today, they're like hamsters on a wheel. They're just running and running and running, and they're tired. What advice would you give them? What suggestions? Advice might be a strong word, but what suggestions would you give them in terms of, right? And there are various kinds of investors. There are various kinds of people who finance the business, right? Not everybody is going to be supportive, or they're not going to have a long rope. They have their own pleasures, so to say. For an entrepreneur who, for example, ideally, feels that days are going by in a blur. There's so much that they are doing. And every day they are feeling like, I didn't get much done. How much more to do? What suggestions would you have for them?
See, as an entrepreneur, right, first of all, you're thrown into knowing functions that you never even heard of. Let's say you're an engineer, suddenly there is profit and loss statements. You missed that whole class or didn't choose to do it. So here you're learning about cash flow, or you're learning about financing, you're learning about legal. So there's so many functions you're learning. And a lot of the time, it all seems like you're drinking from a fire hose. But your competencies are limited, as in, if you're good at this, you're good at this. I mean, or you have the training to actually be competent at that. That's why you got that. Doesn't mean those other functions are less important for the startup, and in fact may have more consequences, right? And for the entrepreneurs, right, first acknowledge that you don't know everything. That's number one step. The fact that you got to just get up and say, I know it all. I know how to do profit and loss statement. I know how to reconcile books, or how to book revenues, or how to do a customer contract. No, you don't. Right? Let's just call it the way it is. Whatever functions you don't know, just acknowledge you don't know them. That becomes easier saying, what should I do going about solving?
Lovely.
Right? Lots of tools out there to solve it. You can find co-founders who are good at this. Find teammates that are good at this, right? The key for an entrepreneur is making sure they know they don't know. Number one. Second, minute they accept that, then you find people that are way better than you in knowing those things you don't know, and will make you therefore better, right? You acknowledge the team sport, whether you're playing with 5, 11, doesn't matter. You know, you're playing a basketball or 6 with volleyball, 11 with cricket. It's a team sport.
Yeah.
There is no, at least company is a team sport. There are other things you could do individually well. You could build good products, which is in your, but the formation of the company and serving the larger, the larger society is a team sport. And if you acknowledge that every member of the team is valuable and each of them will play an important role, and if you are the founder and you accept you don't know, you also accept that you're a good listener.
Lovely.
And therefore you take those two and start orchestrating, then you will find that it'll be a tune that everybody will love.
Absolutely. Lovely.
So that I think it's most of the time it goes back to my first, right? You don't want to expose that you don't know. Therefore you don't want to be vulnerable. I mean, all investors know that you don't know. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, I know exactly the things you don't know. Because the minute you walk in, you're good at many, many things. You can't be good at all things. I want to know what you're good at and why you're doing it. The why has to be clear to you.
Absolutely.
And that will become, great companies were built by great teams.
Yeah.
And yes, one person had a great idea or two people had a great idea. But great teams build great companies. So the acceptance is the hardest part. Most of the time they don't want to accept. They've been told not to. You should be good at all these things.
Yeah.
I mean, people spend their lives reconciling books. Their whole lives. Yeah. So why should you be good at it?
Yeah. See, one of the things that I tell everybody, not just entrepreneurs, is 2 words that are most detrimental to you in every aspect of life. 2 words. And 4 words, the exact opposite of that, which can be liberating and the greatest thing that you can do to grow. And I ask them, I'll help you. The 2 words, the first word is I, right? And you just need to find the second word, which is the biggest stumbling block, obstacle in all of life. And the average time that it takes people to find the second word, average time. The maximum time has been 3 days for one person. The shortest time has been about 30 minutes. The average time is about 3 hours. And then they find out that what I'm referring to is, I say it's a conversation stopper. It's a relationship killer. And it does not help you at all. And they go, I quit. I hate this, that, all of those things. I say, no, it's I know. It's I know. And the most important thing that you can say to grow in business, in life, is I might not know, or even better, I do not know. Yeah. Because when I acknowledge I don't know, I do not know, then I can start looking around for who in my circle can help me fill that gap of where I don't know. And like you said, I cannot be good at everything. And I should not be good at everything, because then I'm not doing something that I can be great at.
Yeah.
Right? Just by, the jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. So I think, So I think very interesting that entrepreneurs need to know what they don't know.
Yeah.
How do you think that they can go about that?
See, I think most entrepreneurs, right, there is some flicker in them that says, I want to do this. I don't think it just happens saying, I should be an entrepreneur. There's got to be some flicker. And when that flicker happens, it's clear that why it happened to you. Then you try to kind of push on that to see if there's more light. And sometimes you find it, sometimes it just dies out. So when they do find it, right, because you discovered the flicker and made it the light, immediately you're thought that you can find all lights. And no, you could find that light. And most good investors say, hey, would like to invest in, teams with co-founders, because people have complementing skills, right? That's one. Second is, it's lonely at the top, right? You're the only guy. Everybody's thinking you know everything. Well, you don't know. But others know that actually the others know you don't know. It's only you who think that they don't know. It's very clear to me. So entrepreneurs, right, when they sit back and say, hey, what is it that I can solve most effectively that's within my control? It'll be that sphere that allowed them to make the flicker a light. Right? There's whatever that thing is that pushed them and got there. The rest will be obvious. Hey, either they don't enjoy it, or they're not good at it, or they should find others to do it, etc. And nobody's judging you for those things that you don't. It's just not being judged. But in your helix, right, the right, you go through steps, and if the more you acknowledge I don't know, then you don't fall at the spiraling.
Absolutely.
So then you keep moving up. That's the series of steps you do, and I find it extremely useful because people teach you things unknowing, and everybody's a good teacher. In my mind, everybody's a good teacher. You just got to listen to them. This goes back to my thing. You listen to them, they know how to teach you. It can be anybody. It has nothing to do with where they are in the social strata of life. Everybody is a good teacher, and as you listen and they teach you, right, you then say, oh, that's good, and when I combine it with this, this and this, and add this team, I can then navigate to the next step. It's this navigation from places, from steps that you, as you put it, is deemed as natural, but it is actually very, it has to be, it is something, it almost has to be intentional, and but it has to be natural. I mean, that's the trick in this thing. I have to be intentional in knowing how to navigate through the steps to the next places. If I'm not intentional, you're automatically down. And you have to automatically think that this is a mirror, that you're constantly looking at this. And most of the time we are trained to look at the bottom, the negative, because it's easy. And very rarely do we want to look at the positive because it's hard, right? Because it's not supposed to be hard, it's supposed to be easy. No, I think if you take craftsmen or musicians or athletes, right, they have to do the same thing 10,000 times before they get one thing right once. And whether this 10,000 is right or wrong is immaterial. But what is you have to be intentional about saying, hey, I don't know, I could learn these things. But in an entrepreneurship journey, you can't learn everything. It's not an individual journey.
Yeah.
It goes back to my saying it's a team journey.
Yeah.
Then you find things that will complement your skills so that you the helix is different for everybody. It's my helix.
Yeah.
It's like the DNA, right? My DNA was your.
Absolutely.
But there is this 23.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So and so to me, I think discovering your helix is important.
Yeah.
And during that discovery, you listen, you take on other team members and find good partners and all that.
Absolutely.
Be sure that you will look at this negative, but the other things will be able to move you through that past and get back to the positive. And as time goes by, the negatives will not keep you down longer and it will be shorter and shorter. And you will get better and better, and as you age, wisdom, other things come. But those around you are the ones that are going to keep you moving through that helix.
Absolutely.
And that's, to me, it's as important as thinking that it's you against the world or you or the world against you.
Yeah.
Neither of it is true.
Absolutely. There's nobody against anybody.
Yeah. No.
Right? It's all in my head.
Yeah. It's totally intentional. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to take off on a slightly a segue, different tangent altogether. Who are the three people who inspired you the most, and what have you imbibed from those three people?
Lots of people have inspired me, but I also sort of break it down into the stages, right? The early stages of my life, mid stages. People continue to inspire. I'm inspired every day, but there are people who stayed with me, who I think still talk to me, whether they're here in this world or not in the world. That's sort of immaterial.
Yeah.
But they just talk to you, right? We went to school together.
Yeah.
And teachers do magical things in the young men's minds.
Absolutely.
And the one teacher who was magical for me was the physical education teacher, right? He was also
Williams,
right?
Yeah.
Prakash Williams. Unfortunately, he passed away. May he rest in peace. He was instrumental in sort of me looking at things very differently, because I still hear the story regularly in my head. Because he would, I used to play basketball for the team, and at that time, you had to score so that your name appears in the newspaper the next day, because they had few lines, and if you didn't make this many points, you're cut, right? So your name doesn't appear. And so suddenly I thought my goal is to appear in the newspaper. I forgot that the team had to win, and I forgot that we had to play, and completely, right? Newspaper the next day. That was my singular goal, right? And at the time I was very key to the team, and I knew it, he knew it, and others knew it. So they decided they will, the other teammates said, oh yeah, we can make sure you score a lot. Next day your paper appears. I didn't, because despite my best efforts to score, I didn't score to make the cut. So that happened. So I told him, said, no, I'm not playing that position. I'm going to train all day so that I get better at it, so that I thought the fault was me not scoring. And then he told me, look, I'm happy you are willing to sweat it out hours a day to get better at it. He said, the truth is, you're good at this. You've decided you want to be good at this. I'm not saying you shouldn't go do it. But at this point, there are already people doing it. Our goal is to win against the other team, not for you to appear in the newspaper.
Wow.
So if you continue to practice, I'm happy that you practice. It's okay. I'm not going to stop you. So at best, you're going to be the next best mediocre player on our bench, playing that position. Next best, not the best. The next best on the bench. You're in the starting lineup. The next, So
I can hear him saying.
Yeah, totally. And then he said, look, what the reason we win is because you are taller than the other boys. You stand in the middle, you grab it, push it out to the, basketball at home. So you push it out and that guy scores and we win. Who cares who appears on the thing? Don't worry. If that is the case, I'll talk to the reporter and say, you played well. That's what makes you happy. Yeah. And it triggered me to thinking that, look, it's not that I was destined to do this or this. He inspired me to say, hey, you're good at it. Be good at it and be happy that you're good at that. You don't need to be good at this just because somebody else thinks you're acknowledged only when your name appears on the newspaper. And I forgot the larger goal, which is our team should win.
Yes.
If I played that, our team was losing. I proved it that day, right? I played outside. I didn't score. I wasn't good at it. We lost. Then it sort of was. So that has stayed with me from the early days. Teachers, every teacher played an important role, but this one, I spent a lot of time with him also. So that I think is also somewhat meaningful. And I bet, like you, if anybody who played sports underneath him had inspiring stories. So
Absolutely.
he was, I think, very inspiring.
Yeah.
Then, in the sort of when I went to the US, right? In the early days, I was, there was not the amount of information available before you went to what actually it is was dramatically different, and you didn't. So you went with some bias, and then you find that those were myths. Then you had to survive and make through, and lots of people made it. At that, in the early stages, in the first, say, 10 years of being there or close to that, I think a professor bet on me, said, I think he gave me a teaching assistantship and helped me through paying tuition, and he bet on me. And I asked him much later, this is maybe 4 or 5 years ago, what was, I didn't fit the profile of other students he had picked before. They were from IIT or, some famous engineering colleges, etc. I didn't do IIT. I did BCom in Vivekananda College in Chennai. So what made you sort of take that bet? He said, I was not sure others would show up for teaching jobs every day. I knew you would. And I said, I went back to say, I said, that's interesting you said that, because I think I played in the basketball team because I showed up for practice more than I was good. There were other people who were equally good than me. And I showed up every day. Yeah. And he said, I knew you would show up. And he says, 90% of the battle is getting people to show up. Then I can tell you what to teach. It's not difficult. But you said, are you there? Yeah. Can I bet on you to be there?
Yeah.
So, he was a inspiration. My first boss was a big inspiration. He taught me a lot of things, but the thing that the whole listening and tuning and figuring out, in many ways, he planted the seeds I built better along the way. But he was inspirational in the sense that to me, he said, all you ought to be good at is decide what you want to be good at and be good at that. The rest will follow and fall in place. And it seemed very, I don't know, but I still talk to him, and he's older, etc. But he was very inspirational. These are all other people, right? My family-wise, uncle of mine was very, was very influential, very inspirational. Later in life, my wife has stood by my lots of vagrancies of paths I wanted to choose and all that. I think, it's I've just been lucky that I've had more than one, or I could name 10, but people who stood by, who kind of saw in me that I couldn't see in myself, but I figured out that they're seeing it, and therefore I should accept it, change the course of my life. And if Williams had not told me to play the position, I don't think I would have gone and played for Vivekananda College or University of Madras. All that would never happen, because by the time I left school, I was very good at playing the position. Really, really good. So I got the other spots, right? But he could have just said, oh, you want to play that? Fine, you can play. Because he took pride in the larger goal. And we were a mid-tier team. We were not the best team, right?
Yeah.
On some days we won and some days we lost. We were a mid-tier team. We were not a good team. But he cared about winning, and he cared about the people.
Absolutely. I think that is absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Another question on entrepreneurship. What are the most common issues or problems or challenges that you see entrepreneurs facing today?
Oh, several, right? First, they come with a mindset that they're destined and they're entitled, right? So that's one. So it's hard. You got to first separate those from the real, right? Because there's nobody's destined, nobody's entitled. It doesn't matter where you come from, etc. So that's one. Second is, the overall goal has to still be that you're solving. There's a purpose in your solution, or there's got to be a purpose, and it can't be because, hey, it's a nice thing, I can make some money. There has to be a purpose.
Okay.
And they may not know it, but they have it, and it becomes clear as they spend time, and to me, sometimes you come across entrepreneurs saying, hey, I can be one, because it's been suddenly instilled in them that you have to be an entrepreneur. I think if you can't be taught, you can't be. These are all those are not the things you. So, this flicker to spark is a very important self journey that happens, and that has to happen. That leads to a clarity in the purpose as to why you're pursuing. None of it is obvious when you get it going, but it is clear as you sustain in the journey. And that's what you need. The energy needed to be an entrepreneur is phenomenal. It's like running a marathon at a sprint pace. The energy needed is extremely high, and you're trying to tell the world you're building a big ship when you barely have a kayak, and you convince, and people know you have a kayak. They think that you can build a ship. So there's this conflicting expectations and etc. But the challenges I see in today's entrepreneurs is, especially today, right? If you think of it, the last big downturn was 2008.
Yeah.
So if you had graduated college in 2008, roughly, right, and you are at 15, 20, 37. So the first downturn is being seen now.
Yeah.
So there's a whole set of people who have grown up thinking that there are no downs in capital markets, market expansion, etc. So now the reality has come in where you have to actually have clarity in why you're solving it and how you're going to solve it, and therefore why that's needed, right? And so the capital availability is different. So now you have to actually come to terms with how you got here, and so you start reflecting back and course correcting. The good ones understand it, wake up. There's awareness. they don't wake up to awareness. They already had awareness. They just bring it to the forefront. The others sort of, fail. So there is the first set of people who have grown up entirely in a boom era, and now there's some normalization that's happening worldwide. It's nothing to do with India or US or worldwide. There's some correction, normalization, etc. Right? So entrepreneurs thinking that always there's market expansion, always there's free capital available, there's no dearth of talent, etc. I think that will get reset a little bit. So entrepreneurs who today, one of the challenges I see, and going back to the negative
the downward slide,
reverse slide, is they suddenly think it shouldn't be happening to me. The world is against me. All these other things are just coming to me, right? And I'm thinking, have you clarified why you got here? Inside, was there a flicker that led to a light, or were you just lucky? Hey, look, I'd like to win the lottery. Somebody wins it every day. I'm glad it's you today. But that doesn't make you an entrepreneur. It just makes you a lottery winner.
Correct.
If you can repeat it more than once, good for you. Right? But you can't play lotteries every morning, right? So you need clarity. While this blaming the rest of the world for why it's not happening, etc., is quicker now, because they haven't hit the successes that they have heard or even witnessed being part of something else where they sort of, big jumps happen. The macro conditions that allowed somebody to go through or overcome hurdles in a fashion that might not have happened otherwise doesn't apply to you. So today's entrepreneurs, you got to figure out, was there a flicker that led to light, that led to purpose, clarity? Go back to basics and say, why am I here? Right? And if you really figure that out, it'll be clear to solve whatever the most recent adversity you're facing. Because the one thing that'll be common is there'll be adversity every day. The question is, do you have the energy to overcome it? Otherwise, are you going to blame and get down into the circle saying, I'm not this, I am that, market is not this, I had poor sales guy, terrible CTO, or whatever the fill-in I did not have. I hear that every day. And, so it couldn't be that we got to 2024. That means there's 2,000 plus years of history of entrepreneurship.
Correct.
It happened to you only and only you.
Correct.
So I think there's a lot of myths that one see. Entrepreneurship is a very personal journey in a group setting.
Yeah.
And it's personal because it is about you. It is group because you can't be on the journey without them.
Correct.
So it's hard to kind of think that when there's problems, it's the group's problem. When it's successful, you just had some magical pixie dust. Very rarely do I find people with magical pixie. I mean, if you take the best scientists who came up with sort of open AI, etc., they will tell you that they worked in great teams and every one of these things.
So Gowri, when you were talking about the challenges for entrepreneurs, you said they come in with a certain sense of entitlement. One of the common complaints that I come across is that they don't have time to do, they don't have time for the family, they don't have time to do what they're supposed to be doing, etc., etc. In Bangalore, there was this leadership enclave, so to say. And I was chairing one, what do you call it? I was the moderator for a panel. So I sat down and the next panel was going on and youngsters were asking questions. One of the questions was, how do we manage our lives, family and all of that, and if we want to be in startup. And a considerably successful entrepreneur, internet entrepreneur, said that at this age you should not be thinking about any other thing other than your business. Your life can happen later. Right now, you just need to have one thing. Sleep can wait, everything can wait. And there was a part of me that was cringing when I heard this, because I keep telling people that it's a blend. It's not a balance of work and life. It's not at all a balance, because balance means it has to be equal. It has to be a blend. This is the background. And this is something that I've absolutely admired about you, which is that you manage so many things, right? You're extremely busy with all of the investment-related work that you're doing. You have time to meet all your friends. You have time to make all the travel. And you have time for family. And you have time for us to go on our eating jaunts as well. Right? What's the secret?
Look, thankfully everybody is blessed with 24 hours. So I don't have any extra hour in the hour. So I can't just say, hey, I have 25, you have 24. Sorry.
Yeah.
So everybody's blessed with 24, of which the same number of rest and other hours for your personal chores are needed, right? There are times when you borrow from one of those to feed another, etc., right? And these are all very cyclical, right? That every day has to be equal, allocated to everything. Probably is the first balance versus blend challenges, right? So if you were to blend it, then you'll have a flavor that is consistent over time. But at any one point of time, that blend will be more of one, less of another, and so on and so forth. It can't be the same the whole way, right? I think to a large extent, right, in the early days, I might have probably over-indexed on one of those over the others. Because I had the energy, or I had the right support of my family, or a great team, or all of the above to pull off all those things, right? But as you go along, you find the blend that works well for you, because it may not work for you, not work for me, and so on and so forth. But this idea of balance is I don't know that I don't understand it very well.
Absolutely.
because that means that you have you are depriving, while to me I'm not depriving. I'm just deciding to borrow one or the other, and the next time I will then adjust it to get there. So it's not like it's not balance to me. So I like the word I like the blend you used. I think, see, the entrepreneurs, right? There's a mission, clearly, and the younger you are, the less are your responsibilities, because you may not have a family, or you may not have that many friends, or you could say, I'm not spending that much time. As you get to the mid, you get past your 30s and stuff like that, some of these have already creeped into your life. They are there. So first you got to get buy-in from everybody you are on this journey, and that by default they are also on this journey.
Absolutely.
The lack of acknowledgement that everybody around you is on the journey leads to this. How can I live? How can I have a balance? No, once you have a journey, they will also adjust, right?
Yeah.
There are days when I'm sure that when I walked into the house, that I was so spent, I could only give, 20% that day. So that means my wife would have to have carried 80%, right?
Yeah.
Then there was another day where I could carry 90. So it's not like every day, okay, I need 50-50, which is the balance, right? If you if you have good conversations with everybody around you who also is on the journey with you, I think it becomes less of a challenge, right? They will all buy in. They will form protective cocoons around you for you to function at this high rate. And then you come to natural steps. Then you say, hey, you know what? I can carry the load, etc. It's only when you get to the self, I only got to do this and nobody else can. Yeah. Without me, the whole world stops. That's when this blend versus balance. But I've always felt that, is this question being asked because of self-doubt? Am I doing enough? Am I worthy of it? Should I not do more? Is that the question being asked, or is it really that difficult to figure out? The world is a mix.
I think it goes back to that one very important point that you made. Listen.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's coming from the families, it's coming from partners, it's coming from friends, it's coming from all of them. And I think there has been not enough listening to them.
Mm.
That person who asked you, are you happy?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't think these entrepreneurs are, and it's almost like they're making a virtue out of a weakness.
Yeah.
The weakness is I'm not able to say no to certain things. I'm not able to say, not able to, it's the wrong word. I don't say no enough.
Yeah.
And you made the statement yesterday when we were at dinner, that the ability to say no is one of the most important characteristics, traits that an entrepreneur or a human being needs to have.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's never a choice between a bad thing and a good thing.
No. Never.
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 Never. That is not the one that's the problem. Yeah. It's perceived equal important things that we need to forcefully say this. Yeah. So one thing that I tell people is this. Very interesting. I do this exercise with people to help them find out what they really need to be focusing on. Yeah. So, for example, I tell them, write down, complete the sentence. When my life is ideal, I complete this with about 15 things. And they'll write things like, I'm financially free. I have great relationships. My parents are happy. My wife is happy. This is actually what happened in a very dear friend's case. And he wrote it down. And he was a client. And he went on. So I wait for them to finish. Then I ask them to write the exact opposite. So I'm financially free. Means I'm in penury, bankrupt, without a pie in the bank. Right? And I'm healthy and fit. Opposite, exact opposite, is I'm unhealthy, unfit, bedridden, almost dead, but not dead. Right? So we write all of this. So my parents are happy and at peace, which means my parents are unhappy, stressed, and extremely unwell. Next one, my wife is happy and gets to do whatever she does. The opposite is my wife is extremely unhappy, never gets to do what she wants to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So then I go through this process where I tell them, I'm financially free. Means I am bedridden, unhealthy, almost dead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is one set.
Mm-hmm.
I'm extremely healthy, fit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Means I'm bankrupt, without a paisa in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Choose one.
Mm-hmm.
These are two. So they say, I don't want to choose. I said, no, you have to choose because this is prioritizing. This is how you say no to something else.
Mm-hmm.
So this friend, I was doing this exercise with him and he had already identified two important priorities in his life, which is his children. Child number one, first priority, second. So we were going through this process, it came to this. My parents are happy, peaceful, and at ease. Means my wife is unhappy, unhealthy, and never gets to do what she wants to do. My wife is happy and she gets to do whatever she wants to do. Means my parents are stressed, unhealthy, and unhappy. I said, choose one. He looked at me and I said, I don't like you. Right? I said, I don't care. Choose. Took him 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And he said, repeat it again. So I would repeat it because I have it all written down. Finally, he said, happy parents are happy, peaceful, and healthy.
Yeah.
That was priority number 3.
Yeah.
We went through the entire list and he found 2 more,
Yeah.
and then his wife didn't figure in that.
Yeah.
So I said, what are you going to do now?
Mm.
He said something very interesting. I'm going to go home and sit with my wife, explain this exercise, and tell her that she's not on the list. And I smiled at him, and he said, that's because the last 5 years I've had great conversations with her. She's been completely supportive of me, and she will understand why she's not on the list. I think what you said about saying no, if I have this clarity, I need to have those open conversations. I need to be vulnerable, which is exactly what you said. I need to be vulnerable. I need to be able to go and tell my partner, my family, you know what? I'm going to take you for granted for the next 1, 2, whatever it is. And if it really push comes to shove, you let me know. And I need to make it safe for them to do that. Right? So I've been saying this. So I think it's sort of when I see it in action with you, because I haven't, the longest I've seen you for a while is now. And you've been traveling like crazy. You've been doing all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But whenever I see you, I don't see a drop of energy. Not at all. So somewhere you're getting it all right. Right? I think that, and again, it goes back to that DNA. Every one of us needs to find out where our strengths are, what we need to prioritize for, what we need to optimize for. Absolutely lovely. I think, we can keep talking.
Yeah, I know.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
You sort of hinted at it yesterday. And I loved it. But I couldn't record it then. So I'm going to ask you this question. What is that one sentence summary of your life? When true, right? And yesterday you made a very interesting thing. You said, hopefully that's the day I'm cremated. Right?
Yeah.
If I can make sure that all of them coincide, and the day I say, enough, don't have the energy, done enough, no more. And you said something very interesting, hopefully that's the day I'm cremated.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
I heard it in a different way from a very senior client of mine.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to him about what are your goals, objectives, he said something very interesting. He said, Cheenuji.
Yeah.
And this man was 76 at that time.
Yeah.
A billionaire.
Yeah.
And he said, Cheenuji, I want to walk to my funeral pyre. That's the one objective I have. Right? So, I want you to tell me what that one sentence summary of your life is, that when it is true, right? Gowri will say, a life well lived.
I'm glad you saved it for the last, because that's quite a hard one.
I know.
I haven't quite thought of legacy in general, but look, I have sort of lived a blessed life. I continue to live one. Right? I don't even know how things work so well. But I think to a large extent, I accept that things work well. I do worry that things don't work well. That's not going away. But the part of appreciating things work well keeps increasing, and this other part doesn't grow. So so by default it's depleting, right? If you were to look at it that way. But going back to your fundamental question, right? How do I know I've lived a great life? Is, to me, I think when it's all said and done, nobody remembers me whether it's good or bad, but they just said they were happy being with me.
Wow. I don't think we can top that, so I think we should wrap it up. I, for one, will always say that. We've always been happy being with you.
Yeah.
Because you are a partner in crime.
Yeah.
right? And today, the transformation that I see in you, and I'm sure you see that in me.
Yeah.
I think we're blessed to have each other.
Yeah. I am.
And for sure, happy to be with you.
Yeah.
And we're going to dinner now.
Yeah. Look, this is what you're doing is I've been fascinated because it was unclear when you started, right? To say the least, it was unclear to you. Yeah. Forget to the rest of the world. It was unclear to you.
Yeah.
But you persisted on this journey, and there were I'm sure there were people doubting you every single minute, every single day, etc. But little did they know that mental health will be the number one thing in 2024.
And AI can't handle it.
No. That wellness is such a huge category in itself. I think that is commendable for you to have had such a discovery, 15 years, right? Yeah. Because that's a long journey, right? Yeah. You could have easily given up. You had many things along the way that came, you could have done lots of other things. I mean, you're still capable of doing lots of other things, but you have decided that you will do this. The world is better that you're doing it.
Thank you.
I truly mean that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the fact that you are doing this podcast is, I like long forms because it allows for just general conversations and instead of sort of, clickbaiting and snippeting. But the key, I think, that you are doing is you're not packaging it. You're just saying it the way it is. And that, I think, is quite unique because it's not very internet friendly.
It's not very internet friendly. And, I should acknowledge that, one of the two people have inspired me to do this in this form. One is Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Right. And the second is Shane Parrish.
Yeah.
Which is, I think Joe Rogan's is much longer.
Yeah.
It can be very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think.
No, and look, Joe Rogan was a comedian, right?
Yeah.
A stand-up comedian. So he didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And he was acting in TV shows. And, the television, he was doing quite well, actually. There was no reason for him to do this, to do this podcast. I think he is, he's just curious.
Yeah.
I find that he has no agenda in his conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he is just curious.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, he's just curious and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? It
And
doesn't.
he calls a spade a bloody shovel.
Yeah, it's like
which is rare.
Yeah. If you're curious, I think you'll be good at this format. So, which you are naturally. So that helps.
So I think, one of the reasons I was smiling when you said that he was a stand-up comedian. Recently I had in an organization that both you and I are members of in different locations. Mm-hmm. Somebody reached out to me and said, there is this angels group and I want you to come and do a program. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. I said, I want you to do a stand-up comedy. Mm. I want you to help them laugh at themselves. Mm. And I looked at that person and said, the first for me. Right? And she looked at me and she said, you're the funniest person I know. Right? You make me laugh. You make everybody laugh. I said, wow. So when you said Joe Rogan, stand-up comedian to podcast, maybe I'll have the other one. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah. No, it's
life's full of surprises.
But
right?
It was great doing this.
Absolute pleasure, Gowri.
It was awesome.
And I think, one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to have you back. One of the things that we want to start doing is to do these Zoom, remote, but high quality.
Yeah.
Right? So, obviously, for anything that happens in the US, there is one person I call. Right?
For sure.
And it's not the President of the United States, it's Gowri. He gets it done for me. So I want to call you in for that, right?
Great. No, I'm on. This is fun. I like it. Thank you very much.
Absolute
Thank you,
pleasure.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the team.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, all of you who have listen to this or watch this, a request, continue watching. Whichever channel that you're watching on, subscribe to it and share it with one person. One person whom you think will benefit, right? The benefit could be one of two kinds, and I'm going to make a snarky one here. Benefit could be that they could actually benefit. And the other one is they'll know how not to be. Yeah? So kindly share it at least with one person. Thank you very much. Stay happy. Keep smiling. Stay safe.